Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Chris Beers. President Trump and Russian President Putin have reportedly agreed to a prisoner exchange. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign minister is accusing European nations of sabotaging President Trump's peace talk efforts. U.S. consumer confidence rebounded sharply in May, recovering from a near 5-year low. The improvement was driven by a more positive outlook for the economy and the labor market. President Trump's media company announces a Bitcoin deal. The multi-billion-dollar investment would bring cryptocurrency onto the company's balance sheet. The Trump administration may soon cancel contracts totaling about $100 million with Harvard University. Our panel joins us for analysis. The Chinese Communist Party brings its repression to American soil. A Chinese-American citizen faces sentencing for a secret CCP police station in New York.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
NBC is reporting that President Trump and Russian President Putin have agreed to a prisoner exchange. NBC cited Russian Minister Sergei Lavrov, who said today that Trump is a leader who wants results. Lavrov also accused European nations of undermining Trump's efforts on Ukraine peace talks. Details on the swap remain unclear, and the State Department has not confirmed the deal. If finalized, it would be the first exchange since April. Russia last month released Russian-American ballerina Ksenia Karelina in return for Russian national Arthur Petrov. In February, American teacher Mark Fogel was freed after 3.5 years in a Russian prison. He was exchanged for convicted money launderer Alexander Vinnik. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says there's evidence Russia is preparing for a new wave of offensives. Meanwhile, Germany's chancellor lifts restrictions on how Ukraine can use its weapons provided to Ukraine. Here are the details.
Ukraine says Russia has no interest in peace, only escalation, as both sides trade massive drone and missile strikes. President Volodymyr Zelensky is pointing to new intelligence and battlefield activity as proof the Kremlin is digging in for the long haul.
We can see from the information obtained by intelligence and from open-source data that Putin and his entourage do not plan to end the war. There is currently no indication that they are seriously considering peace or diplomacy.
The warning comes after Russia launched what Ukraine is calling its largest aerial attack since the start of the invasion, more than 350 drones and 9 cruise missiles. Ukraine says it intercepted most of them, but falling debris was reported across 10 regions. Officials say at least 18 people were killed in the weekend strikes. Russia, meanwhile, says it shot down 128 Ukrainian drones Sunday night into Monday morning. In a major policy shift, Germany's new chancellor says Ukraine is now free to strike targets inside Russia using Western-supplied weapons with no range restrictions. Chancellor Friedrich Merz said Monday it's a matter of self-defense. He argued that Ukraine can't repel attacks if it's not allowed to strike back beyond its own borders. Ukraine has long pushed for the green light to strike deeper into Russian territory, calling it a key step toward ending the war. Merz did not confirm whether Germany will send long-range Taurus missiles, something he supported before taking office. The Kremlin quickly condemned the announcement, warning it could derail already fragile peace talks. Zelensky has not yet commented publicly on Merz's remarks. Meanwhile, in the U.S., calls to impose harsher sanctions on Russia are growing louder. Senator Chuck Grassley, a longtime advocate for a tougher stance on Russia, took to social media with a blunt message for the president. "I've had enough of Putin killing innocent people. President Trump, take action, at least sanctions." The Iowa Republican has repeatedly urged Trump to impose harsher measures, accusing Putin of using diplomacy as a smokescreen for aggression. Senator Lindsey Graham, who is backing a bipartisan sanctions bill, said Russia's latest assault must be met with action. That legislation would target the Kremlin and any country supporting its war efforts with tariffs and sweeping penalties. Other Republicans are also calling for tougher steps, warning of lasting consequences if the U.S. doesn't act.
And today, President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social claiming that if not for him, Russia would be in far worse shape. In that post, President Trump said that really bad things would have already happened to Russia if it weren't for him. and warned that Putin is playing with fire. And in a separate post, he turned to trade, saying he's pleased with the proposed 50% tariffs on the European Union. He accused EU leaders of stalling negotiations, but says they've now reached out to set meeting dates. Trump called it a positive sign and urged both Europe and China to open their markets to the U.S. The Swiss government is hoping for results in U.S. trade negotiations by July. Switzerland faced higher tariffs than its EU neighbors after President Trump announced new import duties. Through diplomatic efforts, Switzerland joined 15 nations prioritized for trade agreements with the U.S. Swiss Economy Minister Guy Parmelin says Switzerland needs to diversify its trade relations and noted that it's important not to depend too much on one trading partner. Diversifying trade partners, noting the EU, U.S., and China as key markets, with the U.S. being Switzerland's largest export destination. Americans are heading into summer with more optimism about the economy. Consumer confidence increased to a 98 reading during the month of May, according to the latest survey from the Conference Board. That reading is a more than 12-point hike from April and higher than most economists had expected. It's the first rise in consumer confidence since November and follows April's level, which was the lowest since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Analysts blamed that on factors including sweeping policy changes from the Trump administration. The improved sentiment comes amid easing trade tensions. A senior economist with the Conference Board says the positive rebound was already underway before a U.S. and China trade deal on May 12th. A potential game changer in the cryptocurrency world, President Trump's media company plans to invest quite a bit in Bitcoin. Trump's social media firm made the announcement today. Trump Media and Technology Group operates platforms such as Truth Social, and it plans to raise $2.5 billion in funds. $1.5 billion of that would come from selling the company's own stock. It made agreements with around 50 investors. With these funds, Trump Media intends to create a Bitcoin treasury. CEO Devin Nunes said, "We view Bitcoin as an apex instrument of financial freedom. And now Trump Media will hold cryptocurrency as a crucial part of our assets." Next, a Trump official today told news outlets the administration is poised to cancel $100 million in contracts with Harvard University. This comes a day after the president threatened to cancel $3 billion in federal grant funding over the school's handling of anti-Israel protests. The Epoch Times reports that Harvard will receive a letter today informing the school of the pending cancellations. The General Services Administration will send a letter to federal agencies asking them to identify any contracts with Harvard and then determine whether any of them can be canceled or redirected elsewhere. President Trump is expected to order government agencies to look for new vendors for the federal funds. Joining me now to discuss the latest in the Harvard-Trump feud is NTD News contributor Mike Leon and national correspondent for the Daily Signal, Tony Kinnett. Mike, Tony, good to see you both. With the Trump administration set to cancel what could be the remaining $100 million worth of contracts with Harvard, would the administration then lose its leverage over Harvard, Tony?
I don't think so, because Harvard really wants these kind of endowments. They want the money that's coming in any way that they can. The Harvard model has been squandering money for decades at this point. And the Harvard administration has essentially just relied on that kind of steady flow of government funding to prop them up for nigh on eternity. And it turns out that when you violate civil rights laws, that does in fact have consequences. American taxpayers shouldn't be funding a university using public funds so that they can carry out other operations which engage in racial discrimination. So I think that if Harvard wants that money, then they can abide by government law. Otherwise, they can be like, for example, Hillsdale College in Michigan and not take any federal money and then do whatever it is that they want.
And Mike, this is the latest in the ongoing Trump-Harvard feud. How are you viewing this $100 million redirection?
Yeah, good to see you both again, Chris and Tony, respectively. You know, I was thinking about this because my sister and a lot of my family went to Liberty University, for example, which is out in Virginia. And, you know, if a Democratic administration had, for some reason, single-handedly focused on one single college, which is maybe a symbolic of, let's say, the Ivy League overall, what would we be saying in the media? What would we be doing in terms? Now, again, I know what Tony's probably thinking. Yeah, how much money does Liberty kind of get from the federal government? And they get about, maybe $15 to $20 million, and then that doesn't include Pell Grants and things like that. But I'm viewing it from that lens, right? Like, why the specific ire, and especially what Caroline Leavitt said from the White House press briefing room, where she said all Harvard has to do is apologize. What the apology was for, cloaked around, obviously, the protest that happened last year with anti-Semitism and the rise in anti-Semitism across campuses, the pro-Palestine protest that happened last year. So the fact that it's that trivial, that we're potentially risking other things that Harvard does, that is good. I agree with Tony and the overarching premise that, federal funds shouldn't go to a university. But just if you took away all of the, everything from the resume and just put column A, column B, what Democratic president going after a university that has a specific ideology or perceived ideology as per the administration, like a Liberty University would have, and there are strict rules with respect to men and women and how they attend colleges and go to classes together, et cetera, versus what the Trump administration is doing to Harvard. On its surface, I don't understand it. Now, again, overarching premise, like I mentioned before, we do need to question why we're spending so much money and why a university that's endowed with so much of our taxpayer dollars is going to that university. But I view it similar in that lens, Chris, where it's just like, I get the ire, but the fact that it could all be boiled down to something as simple as an apology from Harvard University for something that their code of conduct, again, and the briefings that happened last year with all of the Ivy League university presidents that were on Capitol Hill. I get it. There is a rise in anti-Semitism, but we should also be across the board with the rise of hate speech everywhere that's happening across all the campuses and stuff like that. So I view it kind of from that lens, Chris, with respect to all of this.
So what I'm hearing you say is that this could have perhaps unwanted political consequences. Tony, what do you think? I mean, could this sort of backfire on the Trump administration going into the midterms?
Well, I don't think it's going to have perhaps a backfiring, at least politically. Americans do not view a lot of the modern Ivy League approaches positively, favorably, especially from the middle class downward. I will say this, I wouldn't use Liberty University as an example. I didn't know you had family that went there, by the way. Liberty is a good place. But I do think of Bob Jones University, who participated in racial discrimination, who violated civil rights law. And they basically were told, you're going to lose all of your federal funding and you need to pay a very massive fine. Many at the time suggested that was a very targeted approach against a Christian university, especially a fundamentalist one. But the university did, in fact, comply, and for the better, right? Because racial discrimination was forbidden on campus, any kind of disparagement of interracial couples. Again, such a silly thing for a university to be against. In the same way, Harvard weighting its admission standards against Jewish students, against Asian students, against mixed students, in favor of groups in order to artificially suggest that group wouldn't be able to get into Harvard unless they had artificial help. Those are some things that the Trump administration and administrations prior have condemned from the university side. But as far as the good things that Harvard is doing, only, and I want to make sure I get this right here, 26% of the concentrated majors of students at Harvard right now are in the fields of engineering and applied sciences, where 43% are in social sciences, 20% in arts and humanities. As far as social sciences and arts and humanities, I don't necessarily see the good things that Harvard is driving with the majority of its majors being something that need tons of money, maybe from government subsidy. I'm all in favor of seeing STEM advancement, being a former science teacher and administrator myself. But I think that if Harvard wants to put its weight behind that particular field, science and engineering and the medical sciences, as opposed to this kind of history revisionism and this kind of Howard's in nonsense that creates racial division, I think that's in Harvard's court, not necessarily the Trump administration's.
Gentlemen, I want to look at something Trump said over the weekend. He floated the idea of diverting $3 billion of federal funds from Harvard to trade schools. What message do you think that would move, Mike, would send to higher education and to trade schools themselves?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would defer to legal beagles out here that I've heard on different programming, not only across NTD, but other outlets that say, well, first and foremost, does the president even have the authority to direct those type of funds, right? Obviously, what's appropriated or earmarked from Congress. But I will say, just speaking to some, and my co-host obviously works in higher education on our show on Can We Please Talk? And I was asking him about this, and Nick said what I'm going to say here, which is we should be talking about trade schools and the advancement of trade schools, as I've had different econ professors on the show talking about the impact of tariffs one of the things that we've talked about has been, the housing market, right? In terms of housing and labor, those jobs that come from building more affordable housing is where trade is, right? Where the trade market is, which is HVAC jobs and electrical engineering, things like that. So if, again, this is part of it's almost like a fruit of the poisonous tree, Chris, right? Like if we're taking it from Harvard and we're assuming that everything that Harvard does is bad and that the administration is just pointing all of their ire at one specific university, I have an issue with that. Be that as it may, if something good comes out of it, because we are investing in at least an area where we haven't invested, and there is a market because of baby boomers that are retiring that are of this skill set, and now we're starting to potentially have the future workforce go into those industries. And four-year colleges are not for everybody. Trade schools are still available out there to actually learn applied trade and go get you a sustainable job that will yield high wages, eventually in your career path. And it's in demand right now as of 2025 in fiscal reporting from Q1. So I'm for that. But again, how we would get those funds, again, going towards the ire of one university in particular, that's something that, for me at least, just on the surface, Chris, is a little bit alarming. But I do agree with the overarching. Again, I'm agreeing with a lot of the overarching premise. I hope you both are taking that away. I agree with the overarching premise. We should invest more into trade and trade jobs, and maybe that is a career path that people haven't thought about, and four-year colleges isn't for everybody.
And maybe Trump's idea will open more of that kind of conversation up now that it's on the table of the national conversation. But I want to come back to something you said earlier, Mike. For Tony, is Trump's idea of diverting federal funds from Harvard to trade schools even viable? I mean, how would that work?
So I think that there are a couple of different mechanisms the president could use in order to shift funding over from one university aspect to another education system. It's been done before. It was done in '92. It was done in the early 60s, both of which I disagree with. I think that I agree with Mike. The best situation here, the best move for the president of the United States, I have no issue with withholding funds from a university based on contracts because the university is violating civil rights law. I do have an issue with then just taking that money and then sending it somewhere else based on what is essentially the artificial support of an industry. So this is one of the things that got us into the precarious place that we are in the economy. We told every kid growing up in the 90s and the aughts, if you don't go to college, you're going to be homeless, you're going to go into the army, or you're going to work at McDonald's. And that was wrong. That was a wrong thing to say. That was not true. We propped up all of these universities with federal dollars, and now you have a bunch of people graduating with bachelor's degrees that cannot find jobs. You have a lot of people going into these businesses looking for business major jobs, for accounting major jobs, looking in various non-STEM related fields. They got a liberal arts degree that is now worthless. And I say that as someone who has one of those degrees that I'm no longer in the field of. And I think that kind of just saying, well, we now have a shortage of trades jobs, so let's throw all of the money and subsidy behind trades, not recognizing that's one of the things that got us here in the reverse, kind of out of the NASA college boom in the second half of the 20th century, is a big mistake. I think tax cuts are a better idea here as an incentive, but suggesting that we're just going to move our money around to whoever is the squeakiest door hinges at the moment is a way of just creating the exact same crisis, an over surplus of tradesmen with too few jobs 10 years from now is going to get us in a similar situation. Allowing the market to create natural demand is a far better way to negotiate education. And we've seen that before, time and again.
And staying with the trades, according to the National Student Clearinghouse, enrollment in trade schools grew about 25% since the pandemic, 16% in 2023 alone. Mike, what do you think explains this trend?
I think there's a couple of factors that explain it. I mean, I can only speak to the growth down here in the Florida area where I live. If you just look at Tampa and Miami and some of the cities that are now making the top 10 list of most unaffordable cities, right? Just because of the growth of what they're building out from a city's perspective. And that has to do with a lot of what Tony was just mentioning before and what I was just mentioning earlier, which is these trade jobs and why there's a demand for people entering this industry. And again, as I mentioned before about baby boomers that are starting to retire out of this industry, there is a high demand for this. So I think it's part and parcel in terms of why it explains that boom. But I also think the pandemic caused a lot of shifts as we've started to return, and I hate using this phrase because of the connotation, as we started to return a little bit more to normalcy, right? Like we've started to go back to, all right, well, now that we're back in areas where we're not restricted and we can do certain things and certain industries have found we can open things back up. Now we've started to see that the people that haven't returned back post-pandemic have either shifted to something different career-wise, and now that's left a gaping hole where we have to fill it. So I think there's a couple of factors within there. Obviously, people leaving from those industries that are retiring. And now, to Tony's point, I do think that we need to train the next wave, but how we allocate that money and how we get that money to train the next wave of people in those specific fields is something we can discuss.
All right, and with
if
that,
I may,
we have to wrap.
Just very
Tony, sorry, we've got to wrap
sorry
up.
about that.
We're running out of time. Mike Leon, Tony Kinnett, thank you so much for your time today.
Great to see you both.
Coming up, the Chinese Communist Party brings its repression to American soil. A Chinese-American citizen faces sentencing for a secret CCP police station in New York. That and more after the break.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
Hate is loud. It gets clicks. It gets attention. Hate, however, is actually quite small. But love is the majority, filling up something far more important than any feed. Love fills our hearts, our lives, our every day, with understanding, empathy, and compassion, leaving hate to become what it truly is. A whisper.
Welcome back. With just over a month before their self-imposed July 4th deadline, Republican senators have signaled they will make significant changes to the House's version of the reconciliation bill. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this story.
I supported the tax cuts in 2017. I support making them permanent, so I support that part of the bill. I support spending cuts. I think the cuts currently in the bill are wimpy and anemic, but I still would support the bill, even with wimpy and anemic cuts, if they weren't going to explode the debt.
According to Senator Rand Paul, the reconciliation bill that passed the House floor last week would increase the national debt from $4 to $5 trillion. And the spending cuts touted by House Republicans, a total of $1.5 trillion, would happen over 10 years. So the annual deficit reduction would only be $150 billion.
And it's a big leap forward. The last time we had a spending cut was 3 decades ago, and it was only $800 billion. Even adjusted for inflation, this is the biggest spending cut, I think, in the history of government on planet Earth. Now, is it enough? Of course not.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson agrees that the spending cuts are not sufficient, but argues that they're an important start point in correcting the national debt. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson also argues that increasing the debt ceiling would not mean an increase in spending.
We should have immediately returned to a pre-pandemic level spending, but President Biden averaged $1.9 trillion of deficits over his 4 years. You don't defeat the deep state by funding it. Hundreds of billions of dollars of spending that if you eliminate, no one would even notice it other than the grifters who are sucking down the waste, fraud, and abuse.
Senate Democrats oppose the reconciliation bill, in particular spending cuts that target Medicaid. But Senate Democrats have also expressed their frustration towards their own party's leadership.
But I'm also furious at the Democratic Party that has lost twice to Trump. But he's been sent to Washington twice to blow the place up because, among other things, people are sick of what they see as the self-interested partisanship there. I think they're sick of a Democratic Party who hasn't been able to show how we're going to address an economy where the middle class continues to shrink and where
Senate Republicans have the self-imposed deadline of passing the reconciliation bill by July 4th. The Senate will almost certainly amend the bill and send it back to the House. And it is important to note that according to the Treasury Department, the U.S. will reach its debt ceiling by early August. And if Congress does not lift this debt ceiling, the U.S. would be at risk of defaulting on its obligations. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The Supreme Court today declined to hear a student's challenge to a Massachusetts public schools decision to bar him from wearing a T-shirt about gender. NTD's Eileen Richards has more.
The Supreme Court on Tuesday declined a Massachusetts public school student's First Amendment challenge to a school ban on his T-shirt. The T-shirt read, "There are only 2 genders." The student, Liam Morrison, sued 2 school officials and the town of Middleborough. Morrison, who was 12 years old in 2023 when he wore the shirt, chose to go home rather than change it. School officials were concerned that displaying the message throughout the school day would have a negative effect on transgender and other pupils.
I have been told that my shirt was targeting a protected class. Who is this protected class? Are their feelings more important than my rights? Even at 12 years old, I have my own political opinions, and I have a right to express those opinions.
The student's father complained about the incident, but the school's written dress code prohibited clothing that might offend certain groups, including gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Morrison's lawyers argued in court papers that disputed portions of the code were unconstitutional, and that he wore the shirt to share his view on the issue. According to reports, the school system superintendent said during the proceedings that some LGBTQ students at the middle school have attempted to commit suicide or have had suicidal ideations, and that some of it was related to how they were treated by other students because of their gender identities. A trial judge and then the Boston-based First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the school. By turning away the student's appeal, the Supreme Court is allowing the lower court's rulings to stand. The highest court's justices are expected to rule on a major transgender rights case by the end of June. That case involves a ban in Tennessee on gender-affirming medical care for transgender minors. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
National Public Radio filed a First Amendment lawsuit against the Trump administration today. The suit alleges President Trump's attempt to defund NPR is, quote, a clear violation of the Constitution. Earlier this month, Trump accused NPR and television counterpart PBS of bias. His executive order called for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting to stop funding the 2 entities. The CPB filed a separate lawsuit against President Trump for his efforts to fire some of its board members. PBS says it's preparing to take legal action against the administration, but has yet to file suit. The White House could not be immediately reached for comment. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino yesterday said the Bureau is looking at launching investigations into possible public corruption cases. Bongino says he and FBI Director Kash Patel made the decision to either reopen or push additional resources to the cases shortly after they were sworn in. One case that they are looking into to target is the FBI investigation into the alleged pipe bomb left near the Democratic and Republican National Committee buildings in Washington. That happened a day before the January 6, 2021 Capitol breach, Bongino said. Other cases include the discovery of cocaine in the White House in July 2023 and the leak of the Supreme Court Dobbs case. That's the high court decision that overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022. Next, Congressman Andy Ogles said 2 House committees will investigate Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell for allegedly not cooperating with immigration enforcement in the city. The Tennessee congressman made his comments during a news conference yesterday.
So when a mayor stands up and is defending those types of individuals over our hard-working law enforcement, Homeland Security, ICE, THP, the Sheriff's Department in the city, he's choosing criminals over Tennesseans.
This month, the Department of Homeland Security announced that ICE and the Tennessee Highway Patrol arrested nearly 200 alleged illegal immigrants during an operation in Nashville. At the time, DHS accused O'Connell of supporting what they called pro-illegal policies, including the launch of the city's Belonging Fund. That fund helps provide financial support to organizations that assist immigrants. Another Democratic lawmaker has traveled to El Salvador to meet with deported El Salvadorian man Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Maryland Congressman Glenn Ivey said today he was unable to meet with Garcia after making the trip.
I was deeply disappointed and frankly angry that we were not allowed to get in to see him. We had reached out. I'd had a meeting with the ambassador from El Salvador to the United States. We met last week, and I told them we were coming and we wanted to meet with Kilmar, so they were aware of that. We also had direct communications with other members of the government, so they knew we were coming.
Abrego Garcia's case has pitted the administration of President Trump against the courts. El Salvador's government has also refused to return him. The White House says Abrego Garcia is part of the violent prison gang MS-13, which the administration has designated a foreign terrorist group. Abrego Garcia's lawyers deny any gang affiliation. Secret Chinese Communist Party police stations on American soil. It sounds like the plot to a Hollywood thriller, doesn't it? Prosecutors are seeking a 3-year prison sentence for a Chinese-American citizen accused of operating such a police station in Manhattan. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the troubling case undermining U.S. democracy.
Chen Jinping pled guilty in December of last year to conspiring to act as an illegal agent. He will be sentenced in Brooklyn federal court on Friday. Chen and co-defendant Liu Jianwang were arrested in April 2023. A hidden outpost was established in February 2022 under the auspices of a Chinese organization called the America Changli Association in Manhattan's Chinatown. Prosecutors said the defendants set up and operated the station at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. The aim? Carrying out transnational repression on U.S. soil, making a mockery of the American justice system. The arrest of Chen and Liu followed a 2022 report published by Spain-based advocacy group Safeguard Defenders. The report said the CCP had set up more than 100 overseas police stations in 53 countries. In related news, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed SB 1349, the first transnational repression law in the United States. State Armor CEO Michael Lucci testified in favor of the bill in March. State Armor was created to help states enact solutions to global security threats like the Chinese Communist Party. Lucci says he is aware of many victims of Chinese Communist Party transnational repression.
These are American citizens who've worked against the Communist Party, who've been targeted viciously through the Communist Party and actually through drug cartels who sort of work as contract harassing agents for the party.
Lucci says transnational repression is a fundamental attack on American sovereignty.
It's the attempt to impose the will of a foreign regime here, which I think would offend Texans more than it would offend anyone from any other state across the country.
Modern China historian Rowena He says critics of the CCP always live in fear.
It's not just about your career and your professional life, but it's also all about your loved ones left behind in China.
He took part in the Tiananmen movements, later writing a book called Tiananmen Exiles, Voices of the Struggles for Democracy in China.
I watched my peers being killed and massacred. I've been living with that sense of guilt ever since.
Violation of Texas's transnational repression law is a felony. Offenders could face up to 15 years in prison. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
A former Federal Reserve economist is being charged with sharing sensitive information with Chinese intelligence agents. The indictment accuses John Rogers of sharing internal Fed reports, including information from the committee that sets interest rates. Prosecutors say he was a logical target for Chinese espionage because he had an important title at the Fed, along with a growing affection for China. Rogers denies the charges, arguing he lacked access to high-level information. The indictment underscores broader U.S. concerns about China's intensified espionage activities, which include efforts to infiltrate institutions like the Fed, a linchpin of U.S. financial stability. A 2022 government report accused China of trying to influence the Federal Reserve since at least 2013 by offering money and other benefits. Congressman Scott Perry warns that the Chinese Communist Party is using unrestricted warfare tactics to suppress a New York-based performing arts show, Shen Yun. NTD's congressional correspondent Melina Wisecup explains what the congressman is talking about when he raises this concern.
Congressman Scott Perry is raising concerns about the Chinese Communist Party's increased efforts to suppress American-based dance company Shen Yun. He described the tactics used by the CCP in trying to suppress this dance group as unrestricted warfare. He told the Epoch Times that the CCP fights on every single inch of the battlefield. He's talking about increased intimidation tactics like bomb threats and death threats that the Chinese regime is using to try to get theaters to stop hosting Shen Yun. A bomb threat happened just this year at the Kennedy Center when Shen Yun came to perform here in Washington, D.C. And for those who haven't seen it, Shen Yun is a show that brands itself as displaying the culture of China prior to communist rule. So that's one reason why the CCP sees this show as a threat. But it also reveals through dance the story of the ongoing persecution against the spiritual meditation practice of Falun Gong. In many cases, victims are subject to forcibly having their organs removed, which is an issue that the congressman has been outspoken about and raising awareness about on Capitol Hill. Now, it's often an untold story that's showcased through some of Shen Yun's dance pieces, and many of the performers and their family have directly experienced this persecution since it started in 1999. Congressman Perry's message here is that the U.S. and Americans should be clear-eyed about this threat, and in his words, understand the pathology of the enemy. He said the CCP just takes advantage of the U.S. judiciary system and also the freedom of the media. So he's the congressman that's responsible for a bill that aims to sanction CCP officials who are involved in forcibly removing organs from those prisoners of conscience. He sponsored the Falun Gong Protection Act. Here's a look at what he had to say about the importance of raising awareness on the issue.
This popularity triggered a brutal response from the CCP, unleashing a campaign of illegal detentions, forced labor, torture, and most horrifically, forced organ harvesting, a practice that amounts to mass murder.
His bill passed the House a few weeks ago, along with another bill to stop forced organ harvesting. Both of these bills are now awaiting Senate action, and it's long been an issue of bipartisan support to tackle human rights abuses in China, but now it's looking like tackling the issue is more important for congressional leadership, especially as we see more of these threats unfold here on American soil. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
Coming up, Argentina officially breaks with the World Health Organization, accusing it of putting politics over science amid new plans to overhaul the country's health system. That and more after the break.
I was a young dad of 3 amazing kids, and just when you feel like life is starting to come together, you get kind of hit in the face. I was born with a congenital heart defect and had open heart surgery as a kid. I was supposed to go to the heart doctor once a year, and I finally went. He listened to my heart, and I'll never forget, he sat back and he said, yeah, it's time for open heart surgery, or you risk your aorta rupturing, and that's That's it. I was scared out of my mind. The night before my open heart surgery, I made a goodbye video for my kids, just in case I didn't make it. Be strong. Take care of your mom. I love you guys.
Seeing, all the kids hug him goodbye and hoping that they were going to be able to hug him again.
I love you. But I did make it, thanks to the work of the American Heart Association. So that's why I'm asking you to join me. Please call now or go to helpheart.org with your donation to help save lives. You can help get the next person trained in CPR, get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care, as well as fund the next medical breakthrough like these heart valves that help save my life.
I'm most grateful that I get to have a husband that I get to grow old with, and a husband that gets to be there for his children.
Heart disease is the #1 killer in the U.S. That's why it's so important that you call or go online right now with your generous gift. I believe without the American Heart Association, I would not be here today. If this can happen to me, it can happen to you. It can happen to anybody. We all need your help. And your donation can literally help save a life. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now with your gift of any amount.
My mom and dad were traditional Asian parents. Now my father would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and then he would come home too tired to play with me. I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. Now my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. So I teased him the other day and I said, how come you never say that to me? And he said, you're too old now. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the material things, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious minute or moment.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Welcome back. Now the latest on the crash in Liverpool, England. A man in custody suspected of driving into a crowd of people during a parade was allegedly high on drugs at the time. 50 people were treated in different hospitals. The mayor of Liverpool said 4 of them were seriously injured. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more on the story.
In England, celebration and revelry were shockingly cut short on Monday evening when a car ploughed into a parade celebrating Liverpool Football Club's latest Premier League soccer championship.
We have arrested a 53-year-old man from West Derby on suspicion.
Where he is being interviewed. Police described it as an isolated incident, saying they were not treating it as terrorism, and urge against speculation about the circumstances surrounding the collision. Police said there were 65 confirmed casualties, including several children. 50 people were sent to various hospitals, with 11 still there for ongoing treatments.
They are all in a stable condition, and I am pleased to say that they appear to be recovering well.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the incident appalling, thanking police and emergency services for their swift response. After the incident, Liverpool Football Club said it was in direct contact with police and would continue to offer its full support to emergency services and local authorities. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
Now to the hostage crisis in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave an update in a recorded message yesterday. He said he hoped very much to deliver developments in the near future on Israel's fight against Hamas and releasing the hostages.
Releasing our hostages is in our eyes. I really hope we can announce something about this. If it's not today, it will be tomorrow. We will not give up.
A Palestinian official said yesterday that Hamas has agreed to a proposal by U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff for a Gaza ceasefire, but an Israeli official denied the proposal was Washington's and added that no Israeli government could accept it. Witkoff himself also rejected the notion that Hamas had accepted his offer for a hostage deal and ceasefire in Gaza. Next, Argentina has officially ratified its withdrawal from the World Health Organization. The move came during a visit from U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. President Javier Milei's government accuses the WHO of prioritizing politics over science and mishandling the COVID response. The move follows Milei's push for stronger health ties with Washington. The Argentine ministry also announced a set of measures that included reviewing the use of fast-track authorizations for high-cost drugs and requiring future vaccine trials to include a placebo test group. Argentina says the measures are part of a broader revision of the country's healthcare policy. 15-year-old Christopher Nicolau was a typical English teenager. Just over 3 years ago, he tragically took his own life after being threatened online. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the cautionary message his parents are spreading across the world.
These are some of the last videos of Christoforos Nicolau, captured only months before the 15-year-old would die by suicide. In March 2022, his parents found him unconscious in his bedroom at their family home in Cheshunt, Hertfordshire. Christoforos' father, George Nicolau, said his son's bedroom remains the same.
We've kept Christopher's room the way it was, but we've of course added, look at some beautiful photos here from when he was a little child with his siblings.
In the final weeks of his life, Christoforos had unknowingly installed access to the dark web while looking for gaming cheat codes. There, anonymous predators terrorized him and forced him to complete a series of challenges spread over 50 days. The teen had to comply, or they said they would kill his family. His parents knew something was off, but didn't know what.
We noticed a difference in his character within that period. So, I'll ask him, Christopher, what's wrong? Nothing, Dad.
Then Christoforos took his own life. His mother, Areti Nicolau, describes the devastation of losing her son, a feeling that persists today.
He's there. I can't see him, but he's always here. It's very difficult. But when I come home, me and George, in this empty house, because it's his empty house now. Christopher was voice and life in this house.
Internet safety consultant Jonathan Taylor says dark web platforms are often hidden behind links, forums, and game-related chats. Messages from strangers, peer pressure, and coercion are commonplace.
We are so far behind the companies and the software and the platforms that it's going to be education where we go in and speak to children, speak to parents, tell them the priorities, tell them what they need to do to stay safe.
George and Areti set up a charity following Christoforos' death. Speaking in schools around the world, they tell their son's story in an effort to save young people from a similar tragedy. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And please remember, if you or anybody you know has been affected by the content of that story, you can call Lifeline on 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. Next, France's government is looking to implement tougher measures to quell radical Islamism. A leaked report warns of the Muslim Brotherhood's deepening influence in France and its support for radical Islamic rules within the communities. NTD's international correspondent David Vivez reports from Paris.
French Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau on Monday called for stronger action against radical Islamism. He said that the state must act more effectively, warning of a growing threat to national unity. The minister's remarks follow a report from the Interior Ministry detailing the Muslim Brotherhood's quiet infiltration of French institutions. Retailleau is looking to expand existing task forces, including officials charged with enforcing French law, monitoring radicalization signs, and taking action on the ground.
The ultimate goal is to gradually establish Sharia law in French society, even if it sounds far-fetched today. It identifies around 130 to 140 places of worship affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood.
The report points to radical Islamist influence in public spaces, schools, and educational institutions across France. Delval says one of the Brotherhood's most harmful impacts is its promotion of Sharia law within the country, which includes mandates such as requiring women to wear full-body veils. The reports reference the Brotherhood's 1928 manifesto, which is taken seriously by the Minister of Interior. Delval says this is a long-term agenda aimed at substituting radical legislation for France's rule of law.
In the mind of the radicalized Islamists, it would take more than 150 years for France to become an Islamic state. The Muslim Brotherhood recommends taking small steps to make sure that Sharia is being practiced among Muslims in Muslim neighborhoods. In the meantime, they promote moving one step at a time into Islamist legislation.
French President Emmanuel Macron will organize a defense meeting in June to analyze more propositions to quell radical Islamism. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Coming up in lighter news, the cheese is released and the chasers run or tumble down an incredibly steep English hill. The winner takes home a massive wheel of cheese as the prize, but this ancient tradition is not for the faint of heart. That and more after the break.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
Food. It fuels our bodies, nourishes our spirits, and brings us together. Because we all need nutritious food to thrive.
Food gives me energy and it also helps me focus.
But not everyone knows where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 7 people in America face hunger. It's tougher than ever for too many of us. But the simple truth is, ending hunger is possible, and it starts with you. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to help families in your community facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. Your monthly gift delivers food where it's needed most, puts fresh food on the table, and helps kids have healthy meals all year round, even when school is out.
You can see the difference with the kids when they're full. Food is everything.
Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Give $19 a month. Your first gift can double an impact. And we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag as a reminder of how you're helping to end hunger for good.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Food donations help me tremendously, and I'm very grateful for the food bank. I have hope.
The simple truth is, ending hunger in America is possible. You can help make it happen. The need is urgent. Call or go online now to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School. College first-round draft pick. During the football season, I would stop eating. But I didn't know I was depressed. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father and as a husband. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
Welcome back. No more free checked bags at Southwest. Starting on Wednesday, the airline will charge customers $35 for one checked bag and $45 for the second. Southwest was the only major U.S. carrier that allowed customers to check 2 bags at no cost until now. This brings an end to the airline's free luggage policy for the first time in more than half a century. But the tickets purchased before Wednesday, Southwest spokesman said passengers will still get 2 free checked bags. Southwest has announced major changes to its business model over the past year. That includes getting rid of open seating. The carrier is also rolling out basic economy tickets like those sold by other airlines. Next, forget the quiet English countryside. For one day a year, hundreds of people throw themselves down an incredibly steep hill chasing a huge wheel of cheese. It's an ancient, though dangerous tradition, but whoever wins the race takes the cheese home as a delicious prize. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson got to go there. He sent us this report.
Are you willing to chase a 3-kilo wheel of cheese down an incredibly steep English hill? If you get down first, you get to take the cheese home. This is the Cooper's Hill cheese rolling tradition.
Oh, it feels great. I did this last year and I came second. Tom beat me. He's a really quick guy. I didn't want to race him again. So I went in the third race and I'm happy I did because I managed to win.
Cheese rolling is thought to be some 600 years old and is considered both an extreme sport and one of Britain's most difficult downhill races. Jem Wakeman has been master of ceremonies for 11 years. He's the guy who sets the races off.
Very excited. I love it every year. It's a good old English tradition that I'd like to keep going. Hence why I'm the master of ceremonies, to keep it going. I do enjoy watching the face plants, but I enjoy watching how nervous people get on the start line. They come in the big, yeah, I'm going to do this. They sit there very quiet, you know, and you can see them trembling. But I enjoy it.
People come from all over the world to take part, even as far as Australia on the opposite side of the planet.
Mate, I feel freaking battered and bruised. I've got so many cuts down my legs, but I did it. I made it.
Did you come here from Australia just to do this?
Yeah. These guys flew all the way from Australia just for this.
That's amazing.
It's well renowned.
It's not for the faint of heart. This gentleman hit the ground hard. He broke his arm, but still got a hero's cheer as he walked away. Another man was seen flying and flipping through the air.
Ooh.
Let's zoom in. With such a crazy landing, everyone was worried he wouldn't make it. After 15 minutes and some medical attention, he came out standing and, importantly, alive. Alongside injuries, you also get humor and good spirits. It's an event people return to year after year.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've done it twice, last year, year before that.
Would you do it again?
Yes. I want to win that cheese, baby.
The thrill and excitement attracts thousands of spectators, filling the hill and thousands more in the field below.
Well, like I said before, a lot of our English traditions are disappearing, so we want to keep this going. As you can see, it's a big event for the local community, brings a lot of revenue in, and it's just a real fun day out for everyone in the family. No doubt you've enjoyed yourself.
Come next year to chase the cheese if you dare. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, Gloucestershire.
Coming up, the State Department instructs U.S. embassies and consulates worldwide to pause new student visa appointments. We have that and more after the break.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。 我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。